Day 4 of my Lead Code 75 challenge. Can place flowers. You have a long flower bed in which some of the plots are planted and some are not. However, flowers cannot be planted in adjacent plots. Given an integer array flower bed containing zeros and ones, where 0 means empty and 1 means non-empty, and an integer n, return true if n new flowers can be planted in the flower bed without violating the non-adjacent flowers rule, and false otherwise. So basically here they're saying 0 1 0 0 0 1 and they're planting the flower here. Got it. So the basic crux is they're going to give me a parameter called as n, which is going to store x amount of flowers, and I'm just going to go with the best case scenario here. So here I'll just have to keep planting flowers unless I'm burning out n. So I can go, first time I reiterated, I plant a flower and I see that I cannot plant it, so I plant again. I cannot plant here, I plant again, and I cannot plant here. So in total n will always be 3, and this case will always hold true because it is following the adjacency rule. So the only two edge case scenarios that we'll have to handle it is, from looking at it, they can say the flower bed length is 1. So what would happen if it is just 1 like this or 1 like this? Then we'll also have to make sure that the count of n and us planting the flower is always satisfied. I would like to write it in the functional programming method, but let me just write it with a for loop just so that I can get in much more simpler idea, and then I can go ahead with the functional programming with approach 2. So for this, let me create a variable current bed count. Now here I can also create, do I need to do any of this? No, I don't. I mean, I can skip I and find some other way to declare it, but I've been hardcore to use I every time I'm looping through anything. So I'll loop through the flower, each and every single flower bed, but we'll always skip. We'll do a conditional skip. First we'll check if flower bed of I equal. So if flower bed of I equals to 0, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to calculate next and previous. Next is always going to be 1, and I'm doing this as a boundary handling as well as assigning a default value to handling in. I don't want to do extra handling in an if condition if there is a 0 to 2 to check if it's 0 or not. This handles multiple scenarios, which is pretty good. Flower bed of I minus 1, then f equals to 0, equals to 0, then obviously we are going to increment the count. So count is going to be current bed count is going to be incremented, and because we've already incremented, we know that the next one in the next row we can't place a flower, so we will just increment it by 2. Now in this case, if current and previous are not possible, then we just increment it by 1. I plus and if flower bed of I is not equal to 1, it's not equal to 0, it's always I, then we don't we need to check the next one. We can always go to the second one. I feel this condition is not needed. I'll be incrementing this. If I find it, I'm going to increment it. Yes. Yeah, this is to handle an edge case. So let me test it out. Oh wow, I did not write a return. So it's good. Okay, 84 and 85, pretty good. So we already got the core function. Now let me write it out with a functional method. The functional method is going to simplify the code considerably, I hope. Flowerbed.re. JavaScript has this implicit reduce option, which is very powerful. Very few people use it, me included. So reduce, what it does is it basically helps you iterate and perform necessary aggregation and calculation that's needed. So what I'm going to do is previous, current, I, and the last one is always optional. And let me mention the type too, so that it does its things beautifully. Now I'm looping through things and I'm getting things done. So I just need to calculate the next value. So because we already know the previous value is by default declared. Same thing, boundary handling. Never forget boundary handling. And after this, what we can do is just write an if condition. We might have to tweak the logic here a bit. So now what I'm gonna do is I'll increment the current pet count. If I've incremented the current pet count, I'll also have to return, since reduce always expects a return value for its previous value. I'll return 1 because we have already placed a flower here, so previous is now going to be incremented by 1, or else I'll return, in case the current value is not equal to 1, I'll just return the current value. Let us test this out, hope it works.